the king of Haswell generation. That's what I would call this motherboard model as. So the Asrock Z97 OC Formula is probably the motherboard model that I've had a lot of fun with, and at the same time a lot of misery with. So I happened to own maybe 4 or 5 pieces of this particular board model, as I happened to return many of them. I think some of those returns were maybe just because of bad luck, I don't know, but I just happened to return a few of these. In many cases the reason was actually the very common USB fuse issue. So the USB ports at the rear I/O have ended up dying quite fast, especially after a few sessions on LN2. So with the Z97 generations, they started to use those different and quite bad fuses at the rear I/O USB ports, as those really die easily. That happened on this board model as well as on my Z170 OC Formula, as well as on the Z170M OC Formula, which is now dead, and I'm trying to look for a new one. So they started using those bad ones with this board model, and they really die easily. I don't like it at all. And nowadays, if that happens to me, I really don't bother sending the board back anymore, because it just happens so easily, and it's really annoying to always send them back constantly. So nowadays I just short the damaged USB fuses, and then it will work just fine. But of course there's a real risk involved. So if something goes bad at the USB device that is connected at the rear I/O port, it can get damaged, or the USB port just dies. So there's a real risk involved when there is not a fuse protecting the thing from a possible short. So just to bear that in mind. But yeah, so I thought about making this like legendary motherboards video a little bit different way. So I happened to get this in postage yesterday, and I thought about just going through it, like making an overview and talking my experience with this board and platform when I just unbox it like this. As normally when I've been doing these videos, like the Gigabyte P45T Extreme or the Gigabyte X58A or Gigabyte X58A OC, they are just stuff that I have here lying around, and I don't have any of the accessories left or anything like that. So now it's more like a retail box from the store, or so to say. So I got this board from eBay. I paid quite good price for it. I got it for 100 euros plus shipping. So I think that is quite good price for a legendary model like this, as they can't really get that much lower. After some point it costs more to ship the board than what is the actual value of the board. So after that point it's probably more wise to just keep them and not to sell them, if you ask me. So I think the price is okay. So why this particular board model? So I still think that this is the best, at least best of the well available Z97 or overall Haswell boards that they ever released to the market. So the Z97 platform is like a fine-tuned version of the like the original Haswell Z87 boards. So this is like the original Sandy Bridge P67 versus Z68. So the Z97 only introduced some few tweaks to the boards, a little bit more connectivity options like the NVMe or the M.2 and so on. So the Z97 was released to the Devil's Canyon at around like mid 2014, like around the time of Computex 2014, like early June or similar. And the Z87 is the platform for the original Haswell, like the 4770K. The famous CPUs for Z97 were the Devil's Canyon 4790K, as well as the Pentium Anniversary Edition, the G3258. And I happened to buy 2 of them from a local individual. I think I paid like 20 euros for both of these in total, so plus shipping or something, or 20 or 30 euros. So that is a good price. I will be trying the board with these CPUs, as I need to check if that the board works and so on, and I also want to see if I can get lucky with the Pentiums, as that is a very fun processor. It only cost like 50 euros when it came out 5 years ago. But yeah, so about the misery with this board, so the USB fuse was only one thing. The most saddening part about this board was when it killed my really like crazy good 4770K. So one time when I returned a faulty one, for some reason they sent me a bad RMA like return sample from I'm not fully sure if it was directly from Asrock here in Europe or from the store, but I got like a bad one. It wasn't really meant for anyone anymore, so it was a damaged one. The VRM or the power delivery section of the board was in short circuit, and it killed two of my CPUs. So it killed the golden 4770K that did like 6.63 GHz for HW prime at really good memory configuration running. As other guys who were close to 6.6, they ran like very simple DDR3 like SPD speeds to get the absolute best possible core frequency out of the CPUs. And my CPU also did like 6.4 in Cinebench or above. And I also, technically I got the rank 1 in GPU by 1 billion, but I was a little bit fool and I forgot to save the validation file. But hey, that happens even to more experienced guys. But I have really got better from those days, so now I'm a lot more knowledgeable user than like 5 years ago. So anyways, but that happens. So it killed my really amazing 4770K. I was really sad about it, and then I pretty much wanted to just leave the whole Haswell generation like that. I happened to get one more, and that was like when Skylake was already released. So but then with that last one, the one time when I was just idling at desktop, so nothing was running, one of the USB fuses at the rear I/O went on flames. So there was like a few centimeter long fire coming briefly from one of those USB fuses. And the funny thing was that the system didn't react anything to that thing happening. So it just ran like normally. And then of course the flame went off really fast. So it was like a few second burst or something like that. But of course then when I really noticed it fast, I shut down the system, and I was too afraid to use the board anymore, as I already saw what happened to my best 4770K at the one random Pentium. So I just stopped using it and I sent it back to the store, and I just got a refund of the original price that I had paid for the board, as it was already like early Skylake days, so they didn't have the board anymore at stock, so they couldn't send me a new one. So I just got a refund, and after that I just left the whole Haswell generation like that. So now I of course ask myself that why do I return to this platform after so much misery and grief? I don't know, but so I just wanted to I have some really good power chip based DDR3 memories, and Haswell is really the best platform to test those memories, as it has the best IMC out of all DDR3 generations. So the original Haswell is the last Intel CPU generation that supports DDR3 like truly well. The original Skylake technically supports DDR3L or that weird version, but it's more of a DDR4 platform nowadays. So Haswell is the best one to test the really good, especially the really good power chip based DDR3 memories. I have quite a few of them, so the best possible power chip based kits were pretty much the original G-Skill Pi series, like what I have here. So here's one example. This is a 2200 MHz Cas7 stick. They are all 2 GB sticks, as the largest memory IC size that power chip made was only 128 megabytes. So there are 8 chips of those on each side of the PCB. So 16 in total, 8 on each side, and 16 times 128 megabytes equals a 2 GB stick. So they are all 2 GB sticks, so the low capacity of course made them quite unwanted by many like normal users, so to say. So many gamers didn't really like these because they just have too low capacity. But the good thing about these is that they can run extremely tight latencies at really high frequency with the Haswell platform. And I happen to have my two best power chip based sticks on this RAM pot here. So this is the custom RAM pot made by Barks, as well as the custom copper RAM heatsink modules made by him for dual-sided sticks for power chip or similar based especially. And here these sticks are two Patriot Viper 2 Sector 5 2500 Cas9 sticks. I have one here with the original heatsink still on. So my best sticks are this particular bin. This is the best power chip that Patriot ever did. The 2400 Cas9 is significantly more worse than this. So the best speeds that I managed to do with the best sticks that I have was around like 2800 plus, but 6, 9, 6, 21 Command Ray 1 timings. So extremely tight timings. Cas 6 or even some could do Cas 5 at 2800 plus. That is absolutely insane RAM configuration. So that's why you need Haswell to really test the best possible things out of your DDR3 especially power chip or LPDA BBSE based sticks. So and I really just thought about then why not give it a go again, as the Pentium G358s are really easy to bin. I'm not sure if I'll try to find a really good 4770K anymore, as that is a really hard CPU category to compete, as you have to bin so much and it's not so easy to find those best possible batches anymore. And then of course there's the 4790K, and that is easier CPU category than original 4770K. But anyway, so that's the overall thing about this platform. The Z97 OC Formula I always liked it more than other top-end models from other vendors. The only board models that could really compete to this Asrock one was the mini-itx Asus Maximus 7 Impact and the special Gigabyte Z97X SoC Force LN2 board. So the Z97 OC Formula has the normal 4 DIMM memory slot design, so it has 2 memory slots per channel. The Maximus 7 Impact is a mini-itx board, so it only has 1 memory slot per channel, and the Gigabyte Z97 LM2 board was probably the best. The first board, like full ATX board, that has only 1 memory slot per channel. But that board never went retail. It only went to some special users as samples. And the hard part, of course, is that it doesn't have the original CPU socket mounting holes. So that is really annoying to use, considering like air or water cooling, as you cannot mount the cooler like a water block well to the CPU. Luckily, the same Polish guy Barks made a custom mounting bracket for that particular board, but it doesn't really fit many coolers. It only fits those very small round AIO coolers or single stage evaporator heads. So that is really limited use. So I just thought about getting the Asrock again, as this is so easy to use. It has the mounting holes. It really is very good at memory overclocking. It is on par with those 2 1 slot per channel designs. The 1 slot per channel design doesn't really matter that much with DDR3. The only difference that you might get with the single slot per channel is that you can run 1 value tighter round trip latency on the memory, like for example when the power chips are running on LN2 at full pot. So that's the only real difference. So the difference is so small compared to what we have now with the Samsung B die, so it doesn't really matter that much, to be honest. The good thing, there are a lot of good things to this board. So the main thing, what I like the most, is the included conformal coding that is already put to the motherboard at the factory. So I think we could just turn the box over and look what is at the back side. So here on the back they already advertised, so waterproof by conformal coating. So they have, it's like a layer of insulation already at the factory, like when you would put like Vaseline or liquid electrical tape or something similar to that. So it really does a lot. So the hard part about this platform is that when you run the memory, like the power chips on LN2, as the power chips really scale well down to the down to full pot temperatures. So the best sticks that I had on air cooling, they can do like 2800 or a little bit above 2800, but with 8, 12, 8 timings. The middle of those three main timings, the TRCD, that only scales with temperature. So the in this case it's the value 12 of the 8, 12, 8, and that only scales down with temperature. So you cannot make it tighter by running a higher voltage. And when you get this kit to full pot temperatures, as that most of the good power chip sticks, they don't have cold plug or cold boot plug, and you can run it like when I just said earlier, 696 at 2800 plus. So a real value, the TRCD value of 9 at 2800 plus megahertz and beyond. So that is something absolutely insane. And the hard part is when you run memory on LN2, it totally freezes the board. It causes so much condensation issues. So the included conformal coating on the board is really, really helpful. And even when you have that, I would still insulate the board with something else, like, well, at least use Armaflex and so on. But that helps a lot, and it's so sad that they stopped doing it. The conformal coating was introduced with the Z87 version of the OC Formula boards, and it was not used anymore after this. So when I asked about that from Nick Shee, he told that the issue is with the production quantities. So they cannot produce high enough quantities of the motherboards with the conformal coating. So the conformal coating is kind of limiting factor when it comes to production. So that's why they stopped doing it. So the Skylake ones, the Z97 OC Formula or the M version, they don't have the conformal coating anymore. So that is really, really sad. It was one of the best inventions ever when it comes to a motherboard aimed at proper overclocking scenarios. So, but that's that. Then, of course, it has great components. So it has extremely good power delivery both for CPUs. So the CPU is a 12-phase power design. So I think that is just a doubled 6-phase and really, really good components, as you would guess, and also a 4-phase memory power. Then they advertise that they have dual stack MOSFETs for lower temperatures, better efficiency, and yada yada yada. High density power connectors so that they can reduce the temperature of the power connectors, but of course these CPUs do not draw that much power compared to what we have now, like the X299 CPUs. But anyways, then jumper voltage. So they just have higher voltage range at the different voltage rails than what Intel has at their specifications. So you can go really high, for example, with the input voltage. So you can use even up to 3 volts on the CPU input voltage. The very early, like 4770Ks, they usually like quite high input, like the CPU that I had. To get the best possible speeds, I had to increase the input voltage or the VIN to like 2.6 or even close to 2.8 volts, and that is really dangerous value. The newer Devil's Canyon CPUs, for example the 4790K, they are usually fine, even with just like 2.2 or 2.4. So the original Haswell, the 4770K, was the first Intel CPU that has the integrated voltage regulator, the so-called FIVR. So the only voltage that the CPU gets from the motherboard is the input voltage, and all the other voltages are then separated inside the CPU. It's really efficient, but it also means that the CPU has quite bad cold plug. So the cold plug of the original Haswell CPUs ranges from like -90 down to -140. So the very best possible CPUs have a cold plug at around -140, just like my good chip had. So that matters a lot, that how cold you can push the CPU, that how far you can push it in the end. Then, well, the other good sides of the board is that it has great overclockability, as I said, with CPU, probably one of the best, if not the best, memory overclockability, good components. It has great compatibility in many different operating system versions. It supports all the old operating systems like Windows XP and so on. Great overclocking software, the Asrock Formula drive. It works well in all different Windows versions, as well as like Windows XP or Server 2003. It doesn't require the Windows management instrumentation in order to function fully. And you can get these like BIOS versions and all the required software like the Formula drive and so on from the original overclockers or the original forum thread at Extreme Systems. For this particular board model, it was maintained by Nick Shee as well as the famous overclocker from USA, Splave. So I will link that forum thread in the description down below, where you can download all this important stuff for this particular board model. And well, anything else about this board? So yeah, one M.2, and then they have different thermal sensors all over the board to track the temperatures. For example, when you are on LN2, you can see what parts of the board are cold, so you can know where there's like risk of condensation and so on. But I think that is all about the background and what makes this board good and why I chose this back then and why I choose it again now. So I could have got the Gigabyte LN2 board, but the lack of mounting holes just this makes it quite boring, and it doesn't really give that much superiority over this board. So I just went with the Z97 when I could get it for quite cheap. So the original price of this board model was around like 200 to 250 euros back in 2014 when it came out. So it was quite good. So it was quite good price already back then. This doesn't have the so-called PLX chip that allows you to run 3-way or 4-way SLI on the mainstream socket. If it did have it, then the price would start with at least a value of 3, like 350 euros or 400 euros, as the PLX chip is very, very expensive, and it is not really required because 3-way and 4-way SLI are just so rare cases, and they are not. That is not even supported anymore nowadays with the new platforms. So I don't really see it that much needed thing. But yeah, so I think we can just unbox this box and look at the board and see what it comes with, and then just check how that board looks like. So that's enough of me mumbling about the platform and board. Of course, as this is from eBay, this is not like what you would get from an actual retail store. So here's the board. So it's black and yellow color scheme, as the OC formulas usually are. Then what we have here is the bag of accessories. So it just has the I/O shield for the rear I/O, driver CD, manuals, and so on. So it's not really important. So we can just put it to the side. We don't need it anymore. So here's the actual board. So as you can see, the heatsink assembly is not connected together, so the chipset part is on its own over here, and the CPU VRM part is located over here. So it's really good design. It's very big and really good, really good at dissipating heat. So you can see that the layout is pretty good. So the only M.2 port is located between the first and second PCI Express slot. These are 4 full-length PCI Express slots, but I think they are wired like X16, X4, X8, X4. The bottom one is wired directly to the chipset, I think. So if you run like 2D at really high speed, like if you run 2D on LN2, for example, then you should always run the simple graphics card on this bottom PCI Express slot to minimize the load on the CPU. So I think if you run like 4-way crossfire, you could run X8, X4, 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 but that's it. So you can run 2-way SLI at X8 plus X8. So that should be enough for like normal daily situations. If you look carefully, the whole PCB looks kind of shiny. So that is the conformal coating. So it really covers all the metal parts on the board that could go short by condensation. So if we just turn the board over, it's quite easy to see on the like the doubling chip that double the power phases from 6 to 12. So the conformal coating creates like this bumpy layer on the components, so it's really easy to see, and it is really nice, and it really does work well, as I said. So I really like that thing on the board, and it's sad that they stopped doing it. But other things about the board, so they have dual 8-pin input for the CPU power. I like it. It's better than they have 2 full 8-pin power connectors instead of like 8+4 or just single 8. So it makes the load distribution at the power supplies end much easier when they have 2 instead of 1. Then here you can see the power delivery. So it's a 12-phase CPU power, 4-phase memory power, 4-DIMM memory slot design, so not single slot per channel. Here's the 24-pin. Then here are all the voltage read points. I like this design more than what the boards usually have. So this is really easy to use. So you can just stick the multimeter probes into these plastic ports over here, and they just stay there. So this is much more convenient to use than those small like read pads that many motherboard models have. So those are just good for like manual checking, but with this you can just stick the probes there and leave them for the whole session like that. So that I really like this. Then here are all the SATA ports. So they are all SATA 3 or 6 gigabits per second ports. 6 of which, so the bottom 6 SATA ports, they are wired directly to the Z97 chipset. The top 2 are the third-party as-media ports. So probably when you would run like XP, you can just stick the SATA devices to the top 2 ones, and but well, they are just they are third-party, and they just added it there so you have more options, or you can run just more devices. As Z97 still supports IDE natively, if I remember correctly, so you don't need as-media to run Windows XP. Here's one SATA Express port. I never had any SATA Express device, but of course SATA Express is shared with the M.2, so I think you cannot run this if you have an M.2 device plugged in. Dual BIOS, as you would expect with any really proper overclocking board, so you can choose between the 2 over here. Here's your here's the debug LED. Here are all the buttons. So there's the power and reset button, and then plus and minus plus menu button to control the different things of the board. Now the Asrock buttons are nothing like the Gigabyte buttons like on the X58A overclock. So you need additional software to use the buttons on the Asrock board. So that creates kind of mess. It generates a lot more it generates more load on the operating system when you have to install different stuff. So I never use the buttons on the Asrock boards, as I don't find it convenient like the Gigabyte solution. So that's kind of thing that they should do like Gigabyte. But the option is still there if you want to use it, but I just never used it. I always just used the Formula Drive software when I overclocked with Asrock boards. Here are 2 dip switches, so one is LN2 mode and one is the slow mode. Here are all the dip switches to disable the different PCI Express slots, so it's handy if one device dies, you can just disable the board, and I mean that particular port, and it should post again. So if you have 2 cards installed with water blocks in same loop, you can disable the other card that is not or the damaged card that is preventing the system from posting. So you can fault find that way. So it's really handy. Here are all the different connectors for like front panel USB and so on. Here's your like separate Molex power connector for the PCI Express slots. Custom like Purity Sound audio and killer Ethernet chip for the LAN over here. So if you look at the rear I/O, you can see it's kind of good. So we have 4 USB 2.0 ports in total, a combo PS2 port, so a combo port instead of individual native PS2 ports. So if you want to use both PS2 mouse and keyboard, you have to use a Y cable or splitter to split the port into both mouse and keyboard. A single HDMI port as the mainstream CPUs like the 4770K, 4790K and so on, they have the integrated GPU, so they have to add at least one output solution at the rear I/O to use that iGPU. 6 USB 3.0 ports, clear CMOS button over here, single killer Ethernet LAN port over here, and then the HD audio. I'm not fully sure how many fan connectors they have on this board, but ample amount anyways. 2 at the CPU side, 1, 2, 3, 3 at the bottom side of the board, and then 1 at the heatsink assembly, so well enough anyways. So that's pretty much how it looks like. So then why not EVGA? EVGA sadly did not have good boards for like Ivy Bridge or original Haswell, so the level of EVGA motherboards went down dramatically after the days of X58 and P55. Maybe one reason is that the very good and known overclocker and motherboard designer called Shamino or Peter Tan, he jumped from EVGA to Asus just around when the original Sandy Bridge or P67 was just about to come to the market. So the level of EVGA boards went down dramatically for a few generations. And now with the X299 Dark and the Z390 Dark, it has gone up dramatically. So as you have seen with my scores and many other scores on the web, it really is on par with the best possible options from other key vendors on the market. So now it's really nice to see it back on track. I mean EVGA back on track, but for this generation the EVGA boards aren't as good compared to like the Z97 OC Formula or Maximus 7 Impact or the Gigabyte Elemental board. So this is my favorite board for Haswell, even with all the sadness and misery that it has caused me. But yeah, those are the key features, and those are all the experiences and background with this board and platform why I choose it. So I'll be trying the Pentiums that I got from the postage soon on this board, and I'll see if I can find any like really good 4790K or even a 4770K. The good thing about finding a really golden 4770K is that with Haswell, the original Haswell, the batch number really matters. So the few selected very early Malaysian batches, they are much better on average than all other batches. So if you find any of those known batches, it's really good chance that you will get at least an average CPU in terms of overclockability. So that's why it's good. The same thing happened with the 980X that I ran up to 7.2 not quite recently. I bought it based on batch information, and voila, I got the 7.2 GHz chip here on my table now. So the good thing is about sharing the batch information. I will link the HardwareBot forum thread about Haswell batch numbers down to description below as well, if you are interested about that. But other than that, those are all the key features of this board. Those are my background and experience, and now we'll see what happens and what I can get. But yeah, so if you have any comments or experiences, please leave them down below, and I hope you wanted to watch this very long and boring video about me mumbling about this board and generation. Then if you liked it, then of course please like and share the video, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.